Millions of children are educated every day in a myriad of settings. Homeschool, public school, private school, charter schools, online academies, learning pods, private tutoring, and more. Why are so many families transitioning to homeschooling? What advantages have they found? What unique challenges do they face? What have they learned, and how can listening to their experiences support your child's education? These are their stories. Together, we learn. This is the Edvantage. Hello, fellow educators, and thank you for listening. I'm Todd Michael, creator and host of the Edvantage. Today's guest is Steve Robe. Steve is a homeschool dad of 3 children, ages 6 months to 7 years, and is married to former podcast guest Zayra Vega of Willow Tree Schoolhouse on Instagram and YouTube. Steve is a broker and owner of his own real estate brokerage, and in his free time is an avid outdoorsman. In this interview, he shares about how homeschooling supports his laser focus on being an actively engaged father, and we explore how an intentional approach to fatherhood benefits the entire family. Buckle up. This is a high energy and highly valuable interview. Enjoy. All right, Steve Robe, welcome to the Edvantage. Great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Heard a lot about you and everything that's been going on. So having a lot of fun homeschooling and learning that aspect of life I never had before. So
yeah. Well, and you couldn't let your wife have all the fun coming on the podcast and not give your 2 cents. to give people a little, because I think it's important to kind of talk about how this came about. So to give people a little peek behind the curtain. I guess it's been about a month or so ago. We had a great interview with Zayra, Steve's wife, and afterward we got to talking, and she was like, "Well, I want to hear more from homeschool dads," and I was like, "Well, what about your husband?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know. Well, I'll talk to him." And then I was like, I'm serious. Like, let's. And we kind of had this back and forth with joking, like if the two of us got together, we might get a little too real or a little too honest. So I'm going to give that disclaimer up front. If this episode offends your sensibilities, we didn't intend that. But honestly, I'm so excited to have you on because I think that there's a real void in, sharing the dad's perspective, but also sharing it unfiltered, sharing it like there's a lot that goes into our decision to homeschool our kids. And some dads aren't willing to go there and talk about it. And I'm grateful that you are, and I always am. So I look forward to a hearty discussion around that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm excited to show my experience here and give you some thoughts.
Absolutely. So digging into that, I would love to hear a little bit about your own schooling experience, your own education. And sometimes I divide up, like, there's your education and there's your schooling, because sometimes they don't always happen around the same time or in the same environments. But specifically your schooling, what was that like? What was your experience, and how has that impacted your views of education?
Yeah, so I'll be 40 in November. I'm a little older than I think I probably appear. So let's go back to, I probably started school, I think in like the late 80s. So, I went to public school, went to middle school. They started middle school right when I was in elementary, and then they kicked it into high school. Got done with that, and then I was a runner. So I had a full ride track scholarship to pretty much, I had quite a few offers, and then I ended up getting mono my senior year and went to a local Division II school that was the only one that was going to give me a full ride. I didn't want to pay for school. Like, I wasn't exactly like a good student. Like, I was good, like just to get by, but I was fishing and hunting and, it wasn't like, hey, I better do my homework. And
right.
Student, like I'm kind of like, like I would get lost in like the woods and stuff like that, and then come home and my mom would yell at me. And then, school was the next day. We kind of had to just like figure it out, right? Like I think I gave my parents some undue stress just because of other ambitions that I had. But then, graduated college, got done with that, and then, I just got out of college, and then, you hit that period of your life where it's like they didn't really teach me what I needed to be. It was like, oh, cool, you got some A's and some B's and some C's and D's and definitely some F's. And but now, by the way, go make a living. And I was like, well, that's great. I'm interested in that. So can somebody teach me how to do that
Right.
now? So it's like, well, get a job. And I'm like, oh, I'll go get a job. So I got a job. And then, fast forward, I was about 23. I was working two jobs at the time. I was offloading engine heads at Chrysler, so working on a factory assembly line, and then I was waiting tables at a country club in our city, Kenosha. And so I was doing two jobs, and I was like, I never really used my school. And so then, was doing that, then got into the bar business, liquor industry, was managing some bars, and, and then always had an idea about real estate. So then it turned into where I had bought a duplex, bought multiple other houses, self-educated myself, and then got my real estate license to sell real estate in 2011. And then in 2015, I got my broker's license. I started my own real estate company, then self-educated, got my contractor's license, started a construction company, do property management, own a real estate brokerage, and own a bunch of real estate. That's basically been my life and education and everything, like the progression of myself.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that handled it. But schooling wise, I mean, I'm totally like, I get it. Like it's quite the decision to make to go homeschool, and we did it right around COVID, so it wasn't that hard. I mean, my kids were going to private school. My son was going to private school. He was in 4K. So we're going through it, just doing what everybody else was like doing. And we went to private school because that's supposed to be like an elevation over public. We were kind of doing what everybody else was doing and kind of just fitting in. But then, COVID hit and everybody didn't have an answer. And then I was sitting back and I was like remembering my life, and you go back and you take a look at like, all right, cool. Well, that period between, for some of you guys, it was 18 when you're in high school, and it's like, well, get a job or join the military when we were kids. So I got to college. My dad was a drill instructor in the Marine Corps, so he's like, you better get really, really fast. And I did, because then I didn't join the Marine Corps. That was like his thing. Like, hey, cool, you're 18 now, go join the Marine Corps. That was my option. Or, we didn't have much money, so paying for college kind of was out of the question. It was like, get out. So I got to college and I did that. And then it was that period with my son Aiden where it was kind of like, what are we going to do? I resorted back to what did I do? And I said, this is a huge opportunity to start to teach my son. And Zayra was fully on board. It was her idea, to be honest. I'm going to be it was kind of, she really started to study and she really started to get to the curriculums. And I remember her approaching me like, hey, we need to buy some curriculums and stuff like that. So she was the driving force, and I was kind of immersed in my work. I bought a bunch of houses at that time. COVID kind of, allowed me to stop selling as much real estate, and I was buying more houses and rehabbing more homes. So it kind of got to that point. So I was very, very busy. And she's like, well, I think we want to homeschool. They don't have a solid plan. And then I remember saying, well, they didn't have a solid plan for me either. It was kind of like, hey, good, you got like a 3 point, I don't even remember, 2.7 maybe. I mean, that's probably high for me. Like, I remember my buddy had a 5.0, and I said, I think you could double mine, and I would just be barely at it. Like, and he got like 1 in the SAT. He's got a fantastic job at Dell, so he's like a super genius guy. Yeah. But like, I think we could double my GPA, and it was equal to his. But they didn't have a plan for me, like they didn't have a plan for my son. Well, for me, back then, there was no, for my parents, there was no computers. You couldn't do any research. But for us, everything's at a touch of our fingers.
Right.
So now it was a little different. We could get curriculums. We could key in on what we wanted to teach my son. We could key in on what we wanted. My daughter Millie is 4 years old, so now she's doing it. My other daughter's like 6 months old. She's at the kitchen table right now, and they're going over stuff, and she's playing with paint on her hands, and like, you know what I mean? So they're doing stuff that's getting them to do things that are, getting them going, getting them taught, and things that matter: reading, writing, math. My son's doing multiplication. I couldn't probably spell multiplication until I was at least, closer to middle school, right? Like, so that was, you really get to key in on critical things, very critical things, which is, and I was telling Zayra this the other day, because I just got, I'm not going to get, I don't want to get political or anything like that, but they just hired a bunch of IRS agents. I said, well, I have a full-time accountant that watches all my stuff, so I'm not even worried about it. Mm-hmm. But, Pythagorean theorem season's coming. That's the one that I'm worried about. Like, we had to learn that in school, but we don't know how to do our taxes. So, like, it's kind of a joke that I have with certain things that I've learned in business that are very, very critical to things that I learned after school that was self-taught. And that's what I like to see with the homeschools. We can key in on things. Like my son the other day, he told me, he's like, Dad, I don't know how to make any money. And I go, let's go learn how to make some money. Yeah. He's 7 years old. Like those type of conversations versus like, hey, your kid was talking in class and, we don't really appreciate it. We put his name on the board or whatever. I mean, I'm
Right.
just kind of like, okay, cool. Yeah, he didn't behave. He's a 7-year
Yeah.
old, dude that is disrespectful to his dad. I don't expect him to not be disrespectful anywhere else sometimes. Like, it's a kid.
Right.
Like, chill
Right.
out. So that's what I really, I started once Zayra really brought it up about how she wanted to take it extremely serious. At first, I was kind of like, whoa, that's outside of the norm. But I've kind of I'm not normal in the sense that I started my own stuff. My family isn't in business. I started my own stuff. So I kind of broke away from my parents, bought a duplex an hour away from them, moved there when I was 23, kind of just got going on my own and figured it out the hard way. And I was like, well, good. I mean, we can key in and we can help him learn, some stuff and control what he's learning. You can always go back to school. Like,
Sure.
you're not, it's not like, oh, we're going to homeschool forever, or, that's our plan is to homeschool forever. But like, let's say he had to go back. Let's say they changed something. I mean,
Right.
fine, right? Like, okay, cool. We're normal in the eyes of the people that send their kids to school, but we have that advantage that I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for a very long time. So I want him to learn things that I know. I take him to go collect rent. I take him to go, we walk through construction that I'm doing. We pop up a lockbox and a sign, and I'm explaining why we're there and what we're doing and all that stuff. So he's learning stuff. Not that I want him to like take over my position or own the company or whatever, but like real life applications that he sees every day. And then he's talking different conversations than than the normal, I guess, where, hey, I have to do my homework tonight, go to bed, get up early,
Right.
get to school, make sure my pants are, you know what I mean? Like, I want that idea that there's other avenues of life out there. Because there's people that have fantastic lives that they homeschool so they can travel because they have businesses and they have to. They got nannies or whatever. We're not at that level by any means, but it is cool to have the freedom where I don't have, I can take meetings in the morning and my kids are getting taught and I don't have to worry about it because it's being taught by my wife, not, people that don't. I mean, I know teachers, I'm not trying to give them a bad rap or anybody a bad rap in education. Like, I get it. Like, that's a job, but it is a job. People don't like their job all the time.
Yeah.
But when it's kids, you take it very serious because it's your child. It's what you're bringing into the world. And eventually one day you're going to be gone and you got to make sure that kid can stand on his own 2 feet. And, that's what I really like about it is I can have a lot more influence than the normal dad.
Right.
And that's what I like the best.
So much to unpack there. I love what you're saying.
And I got a little wild already. So
I love it. I love it. And this is and the reason why I say so much to unpack is you're highlighting so many of the advantages of homeschooling. And I love something that you said early on about your own education. You're like, I wasn't good at the school stuff, but then in the same breath, you're like, it's because I was out doing all of these other things. And with homeschool, like all those, other things, like getting lost in the woods, going hunting, fishing, like all of the things that you valued, those are all part of the palette that is your child's education. So like when you take your son to go do those things intentionally now, it's not, oh man, I'm going to make him a bad student because I'm off doing this. It's, oh, I'm going to make him a well-rounded human being, and this is part of his education. And that piece is what I think is so valuable about having that time. And especially, for you as a business owner and being self-employed, you don't have to be away from the home all the time. And so there is that added flexibility. But even for parents who work outside the home, I mean, I know homeschool families where both parents work and they're still able to balance homeschooling, and it's, a trade-off. Like, I'm home with them at this time of day and I'm home with them at this time of day, and you're still getting that contact time, you're still getting those interactions. And think about how much time that adds up to be. I mean, a kid at school, that's a full-time job. And so all of those hours every week, your 40-hour school week after week after week, that influence being with other adults, not only is it not with you, but now they have that added influence of these other adults that, you don't know what their values are. You don't know what they're talking to your kid about. And I hesitate to go full, like, terrifying, ominous, like, who knows what they're saying. But it is true. Like, you don't know, you don't have control. And I hope that most people have seen enough examples and are aware enough of the reality to know that in instances there are conversations that aren't appropriate happening. There are things that your kids shouldn't be exposed to that teachers are bringing up in the classroom. And that's another huge benefit of, like, you know that it's your family, you know that what's being taught, you know what's not being taught, what's not being covered, what they're not being exposed to, and all of those fold in. So you've highlighted so much. I love it. I,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, it reminds me of a story. So my sister Terry, she has a daughter Ellery, and she runs cross country, and I was a runner, as I mentioned, and the teacher said, Ellery, the other kids have been training a little longer, so you probably don't have a chance really to win today. And I asked my sister, I go, can I have that teacher's number? And of course, they didn't give it to me because I wanted to say, like, look, we do not use that word. We do not talk like that. That
Right.
is pathetic. That is
Yeah.
pathetic human being talk. That is not what we do. I mean, I had so many, and like you said, you don't want to get into the doom and gloom and what they're telling your kids. I mean, there's some wild stuff on the news now. I mean, of course, that they want your kids to do, but I mean, this just the mindset. Like I remember picking my son up from school, and he'd be like, "I'm so tired. I'm so tired." And I'm like, what are you tired for? Who told you you're tired? I mean, you sat in this chair, you moved the pencil around. I'm
Right.
like, how are you tired? And he's running around at home, and I'm like, don't tell me you're tired, because there's times I don't get to go to bed. You know what I mean? Like you got little kids, you don't get to go to bed, and you got to be up in the morning, you got to make money, you're self-employed. Like, don't, I don't want to start the tired stuff at
Right.
6 years old.
Yeah.
Or I can't, dad, or I can't. He's a red belt in karate. He's about to be a black belt, and he's 7. So, he's talking about, oh, dad, it's getting to be, I don't know. I said, we don't quit. We're not getting tired, So he enjoys it. He's getting promoted. He's getting moved up, and that mindset shift of, you can do it. You need to do it. We're not quitting. Not to say, like, you have to stick with everything your whole life, because there are times when cutting loose is going to benefit you more. But, like, let's get through some stuff. Let's make it happen. Let's feel, like his Friday class is harder than his Monday and Wednesday. So he, naturally on Fridays, oh, dad, I don't feel good sometimes. I'm like, let's go,
Right.
dude. Get in the
Right.
car. We got to go. You'll be fine. My stomach hurts. Whatever. Grab him after and take him to lunch, or take him to dinner after and talk about it. Like, hey, we got to get going here. And just those mindset things that I see people have that are in the real world. Because I mean, I have employees, I have agents, and people that you see that, and then they're adults, but then they're programmed, but it's okay because everybody else talks that way.
Right.
You have to be, so teaching them is self-awareness. That, are you really tired? Like, are your legs working? Yeah, I'm fine then, dad, if that's what it means. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Move forward with the progress is what we're looking for,
Right.
and doing that kind of stuff. So just like you said, like the what they want to tell you, or what it's other people's fears and other people's problems start to get imposed, or other people's regret start to get imposed, but then that's imposed
Right.
on people, and then everybody else just kind of flocks together, and then they're like a pack of people with the same ideas,
Yeah.
but have that pack of people could all be horribly minded, but if they were with a different group of people or different mindset, they could be different, total different lifestyle, total different life. And
Right.
that's what I want I want the consciousness of my kids to be able to say, you know what, dad used to say this. Dad said I can't, don't act like that. And then be able to get away from the people that have those mindsets. Be able
Mm-hmm.
to identify, I don't want to be like that. Even though that's an adult and I want to respect my elders, I don't like what they said. That's not something I want to be.
Right.
That's what I like to help. And that's what I'm trying to key in on. You mentioned, like, the outside other activities. Yeah, hunting and fishing. I mean, I do it all the time. I mean, we got boats. I'm going to Montana elk hunting next year. Never did it before, but I'm going to fly up a mountain, and everyone's like, the thing is, like, hey, you got to be in shape, and you got to, you're going to experience some altitude sickness. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I'm going elk hunting in Montana. That's all I heard. Like,
Yeah.
whatever else,
Bring it on.
we're going to figure it out. And you know what I mean? I'll be standing on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's my thought. That's kind of my life process is to kind of break the generational curses. I have a great family. Don't get me wrong, but they're once in a while I hear, like, oh, when's Aiden going to go back to school, or why isn't he in T-ball? And I have my own thoughts, and I don't like to say them. I'm like, well, he's not going to go back to school because they're not teaching him, things. I mean, I'm nowhere an educator or anything like that, and I do know that they do learn a lot in school. But, like, I want him to key in on things that are real world successful.
Yeah.
And I want him to be able to operate and turn on, he can drive a stick shift eventually here. Like you can't do
Right.
that. The
Right.
dangerous end of a hammer, so many people have lost throughout the years that I've seen. And the big, like I said, just being able to adapt your mind and be conscious of your thoughts, taking the negativity out of your thoughts and moving it to positive is, I think, one of the most powerful things a person can do. But you can't do that in a major group where everybody's being told what to do for so long.
Yeah,
You have
that
to be,
herd mentality.
yes, you have to be conscious for yourself to be able to develop that. And that was out of school, because that was outside of school that I did that,
Hmm.
where I was no longer around my friends, my teammates. And then I just kind of like said, I gotta go off on my own. Your team by yourself all of a sudden, and you need to make it happen, and you have to be conscious of those thoughts. So that's something I learned later, but I'm teaching him now. So life
Right.
lessons, I can have a huge, I can have huge implications on him, I guess, or influence on him in the sense of things that I've learned that I can teach him right off the bat by being around me, that I don't think I could teach him, if I was dropping him off at 7 in the morning, picking him up at 8.
Right. Yeah.
That's huge.
And that intentionality, I agree, that intentionality can really only come when you have that extended amount of time together. I wonder what your perspective is, and this is kind of a leading question, and I fully acknowledge that it is. I clearly have my own conclusion, so the way I ask the question is going to make it clear what my thoughts are. But did you see in your education experience a difference between how well it worked for boys and how well it worked for girls? Like when you think about yourself, were you an outlier among the other boys at your school, or did it seem like for most of the boys or a lot of the boys, it wasn't quite a good fit, and for most of the girls or a lot of the girls, it was a good fit? Or were there any gender patterns that you picked up on?
I mean, I always thought girls were smarter because they always got better grades and stuff like that. But I also noticed that as I got older and like girls would start to call me, I'd be in the woods, and then my mom would be like, "Oh, this girl called you," or this girl. So they didn't do like the same things I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they had more time to study and do homework, maybe, and that's why they were smarter. I have no idea. I never really saw any
Yeah.
gender. I mean, I guess I always felt like, I remember like, when girls would do, I'd say what they got on test versus what I did. I always felt, but I wasn't that good of a student. Did I apply myself? Probably not as much as I should have. I've just talked to a teacher the other day, and he's like, "Well, it's because you were lazy." I said, "That's pretty strong. Like, I'm not a lazy guy. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I beg to differ.
I got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm not lazy. It just wasn't an interest to me as much as it was for others. And I know I have super smart friends. I have some of my friends are doctors. My sister's a nurse practitioner. My other buddy, like I said, I think he got one wrong on the SAT, and he walked out knowing which fraction he flipped, and he was trying to go back in and like having a panic attack in the hallway.
Oh my
And I'm still in touch with him, and he's still. He went to Marquette here, which is a prestigious school for engineering, and he's working at Dell as an engineer, has a fantastic lifestyle. But again, we used to have to go pick him up, like, "Hey man, we're gonna go play baseball at the school." And he'd be like, I remember this like it was yesterday. He's like, it's when the internet first came out. He's like, "No, I'm pinging this guy to slow down his internet so that he can't do stuff." And I'm like, "Dude, we're gonna go play baseball." Like, and he's pinging him. It's like, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "It's the internet." I had no idea what was going on. I'm like
Yeah,
swinging around trees and like doing crazy, stuff when as a kid, fishing or whatever. And he's on the internet. So there's different interests
sure.
and stuff like that I feel came into play. But like, like my daughter, she goes fishing. My youngest one, she goes fishing, and my son's all into it. Like they want to go. They want to go. Like that's what they ask me. Like, when are we going again, Dad? When are we going again, Dad? So we just got to keep. We want to try minnows. We want to try worms. So like their brains are working in those directions. That's what I feel happened with me. I don't know if it was necessarily gender, because I know girls that hunt and fish and stuff like that,
Sure.
and guys that don't, or played sports or did not. So I think there's a lot of factors that really
Sure.
came in. Our home environment is probably another one that came into play, for whatever direction that they chose. But no, I didn't. No, to get like long story short, I just I assume girls were smarter than boys most of the time based on test results that I was seeing around the classroom. So
Yeah.
now
Well,
it's
and the reason why I ask is, and maybe maybe that it's not a gender divide, but I do think there is like this one form of intelligence or one form of like performance, I guess is a good way to put it, that is valued in a lot of traditional school settings, especially when we were kids. It was even more so because there wasn't anybody even like challenging it. But um, this idea of like if you're good at memorizing the answers the teacher wants you to memorize and then regurgitating them on a test, you get high scores on a test, and everyone assumes that you're intelligent. But what's funny to me about that is, and again, like not trying to make it a gendered thing, but if you were to take all of the kids, boy, girl, whatever, who were doing well on those tests when you weren't doing as well, and you're like, well, maybe I wasn't applying myself. But it's interesting because I wonder how many of them would be able to handle some of the things that you've done since, like self-educating yourself and then succeeding in all of these different areas and industries and the stuff that you've done. So I do think I agree with you. I do think it's a very much different skill set, a different and there's lots of factors that go into it. But what frustrates me is how most traditional education settings really only reward or recognize one. So I'm really glad that for you, like you were able to push yourself, you're able to discover, you got fast, and so that was kind of like a springboard to get you through that educational experience, get you through to a point where you could then say like, oh, I got all this formal education, it's kind of useless. Now I'm going to continue learning. But man, I see so many kids just start to die inside when they see, oh, I'm not that good at school, I must not be smart. Instead of valuing, like, but I am really great at these other things, or I can learn about these other things, they kind of just give up. And the guy, like, you could almost create a avatar of the guy. It's like he's working at a, local mechanic shop, or he's working in like construction or something like that. He's kind of almost self-limited to where like, oh, well, this is what I'll do, this is the only thing I can do. Yet when you have a conversation with them, he understands the ins and outs of the whole industry, and he has a perfect understanding of 20 other topics that could come up, and just incredibly intelligent. And yet, because he didn't do great in school, he thinks, I'm just not very smart, I'm not very bright. You know what I mean? You see that distinction?
yeah, I definitely do know. I agree. So it's funny that you say that. So when I wanted to be a lawyer when I was first, so I wanted to go to pre-law. My mom didn't think I was smart enough, and love my mother to death, but she's told me this. She's like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, we went with communication. That's what most athletes go with. So
Yeah.
now, I mean, fine. My mom put me in that box for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's all your mindset. I feel it's personal mindset and it's upbringing. It's how you compute data for yourself and where you want to see yourself. So like I
Right.
think back at that and it makes me irritated. And I not at my mom in a sense, but the sense that I just kind of went with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like because you're in school and it's kind of like they okay, at 9 o'clock we have to go here, then we have recess at 11:15, and they put it all on the board, and you have to be here and you have to be there and you have to be here. Well, now, I mean, I'm kind of I don't have an alarm clock. I don't have any other meetings today. I don't have any rules, but I've created that. So I'm kind of like a outcast when it comes to that. Now, I know a lot of my friends and stuff like that, they have to go to work, they have their 401k, and they've adapted that. But I did research and I've gone to my own conclusions, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather own houses because it's going to pay me every single month. It appreciates or it depreciates, but at least I'm getting that rent every single month and it's my money in my pocket. I don't have to ask to borrow it again.
Right.
And stuff like that
Right.
I've really kind of tuned into. And if you love your 401k, you know what? I have one too. So like I've got it all. But like I get it. Like, but other people, it's all how you react and it's all how you just, it's, I think in a way you're kind of born with certain attributes that are going to help you later. And mine was not that I rebelled in a negative way, but I questioned everybody
Yeah.
all the time, including my parents, including my family. And then I even ask questions to certain people that I know the answer is I'm going to do the opposite. But I want to hear that avatar that you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
tell me what they would do so that I know doing the opposite is more what I would do, is more my
Right.
style.
Right.
That's kind of where I came from with it. So, that's that I totally get. I know the avatar that you're talking about, and I deal with them all the time
Sure.
in life and business. And but I have some of those. My mom's been a nurse since I was born. My dad's been in maintenance since I was born. And if I ask them like, hey, You guys want to take a look at, an opportunity, or, hey, I'm going to flip a house. Do you guys want to get it? Oh my God. Oh my God. But they never taught themselves. So then when I make it happen, they're like, oh, we're proud of you, because that's what they default. We're proud of you. Oh my God. He's freaking nuts. We're proud of you. Right? Like, how did he do that? He's, oh my God. Like, so that's kind of how I see those, avatars, and like you're talking about, you gotta make your own way.
Mm-hmm.
I think school does a good job of trying to, I don't want to, I don't like picking on it, because I think
Sure.
that's where it gets, like homeschool, that's our choice. We like to homeschool our kids because it has nothing to do with, there's great people, there's great teachers, the atmosphere is fine for certain people. It wasn't necessarily for myself.
Right.
And I learned that. So now you see your children, like they're my kids. Unless something is wired differently in them, I don't see them like, I asked my kid, Aiden, what do you want to be? And he's like, well, I want to be a builder. I mean, what kind of kid is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he wants to build houses. And I never had any influence. I'm not a builder. But it's just something he wants to do. He's playing with Legos. So it's like, oh, cool. This is my buddy. He builds houses. Let's walk through. And he was throwing cement into the trailer with one day. And so, so you got to kind of curtail to it. And then, my daughter wants to be a doctor, so we got her all that stuff. And, you let them dream and you get their dreams going, but then you hold them accountable for their dreams, I feel, and get them so that they're learning, get them so that they're in the right direction. But the big thing is self-confidence. I'm telling you, I've seen people with no self-confidence, and this is coming from a standpoint where I own a real estate company. People are nurses. People are nurses. Maybe they work in retail, and they're coming out of, I have a girl that's going to school with her master's degree that's on my real estate team, and she's a hospice nurse, scared of the world. I mean, and you would think, she got good grades, and she, I got another guy, he's got the GI Bill, he's going back to school because he wants to get his degree, scared of the world to talk to people in real estate. And I have to teach them. I have to build them up. I have to make them killers in real estate so that they can hold their own. They're afraid to ask people if they're pre-approved. I said, you're going to drive somebody around, waste your gas money, and drive them around as a tour guide. You're afraid to ask them if they have any pre-approval, if they have any money.
Right.
But what if they get insulted? Oh, I'm sorry if they get insulted. I go, this is not our job this is not fuzzy feelings and fun.
Right.
Do they have money or not? And so you build them up. But what happened? They're, one's late 20s, the other one's like mid 40s. What happened all those years where they are scared to ask somebody if they're pre-approved to sell them a house to make more money? Whereas me, I ask people, and if they get mad at me, I could care less. Like, what was the difference there in wanting to be successful? I mean, and it used to affect me, but at the same time, I'm like, I got to do this. I can't be timid and shy. And I'm an introvert. Believe me, I'm an introvert. I don't need to go outside. We always talk to Zayra. She's like, when we're going to get our dream home, I go, you mean our compound?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So like, that's 100%. How I am. But I consciously say, you can't be an introvert if you want to be successful with this. You have to go talk to people. You have to get out of your own way, and it's self-development. But I do think that's curtailed. And I'll give you an example. Aiden, he got in trouble one time. They give him dots in school. Red dot was you're a terrible kid that day, you're naughty. Yellow dot was like you're a marginal kid, like you were kind of teetering on either green, which is great, or red, that was bad. So then he got a yellow dot. Okay. And he gets in the car, and he's like, Dad, look what happened to me today. He shows me it's a yellow dot that says talking to his friends. And he goes, I wasn't even talking, Dad. The teacher's wrong. And he's built his whole case, right? He's 6 years old, and he's mad. Like, what am I supposed to do? We're sitting there, they're my friends, we're playing with blocks, we're having a great time, and this teacher just comes out and starts telling me that I'm talking too much, but my friends were talking too, so yell at all of us. You know what I mean? Like, he did,
so good.
So I'm like kind of proud of him in a sense, but then I'm like, oh, I should get mad at him because he did get a yellow dot. So I'm like, wait a minute, think, Dad, think for yourself. And I talk to the teacher, I go, what happened? She goes, well, he was talking. I generally get everybody where they have a bad day, so I'm going to give them a dot that's less satisfactory. And I go, that's ridiculous. He's talking to his friends. He's 6. I go, why are we having this exercise? So I started like pressing her, to the point where Zayra's kind of like tapping me under the table, like, this is conferences or whatever. You got to come in and see if you're counting. was good or bad, or the opinion of somebody about what your child is. And I'm like, okay, so we're sitting there, and Zayra's like tapping me underneath because I'm really pressing this teacher. Like, so everybody gets in trouble. Are they all guilty? Like, so like, is there, how do we justify this activity? Like, is this, is this something we've been briefed on, or is this surprise your kid's going to be in trouble for talking? Like, is he not supposed to talk? What
Right.
are we doing here? And my son, it's funny because like, uh, I, he's been raised in a sales environment. We run our companies out of the house. So he's been around real estate, sales, construction guys that are saying things that are not so great. You can probably overhear. My thing is my son swearing? Like, I would think that's bad. Like, people swear, but is my 6-year-old? She's like, no, he behaves great. His language, he's doing great. And I'm like, oh, but he was talking.
Yeah.
So he's a social kid. So that's what he was doing. His mom, Zayra talks way more than I'll. Like, she knows everybody. You go to the gas station. Zayra's conducting court inside it. She knows people everywhere.
Yeah.
And Aiden takes more after her than I do, and then he takes after me. So I found that exercise to be just one of those things where you roll your eyes like, okay, Aiden, you can't talk to your friends anymore, but he's going to do it again. But
Right.
what was so terrible? What had to, because the teacher wanted to talk, or what was so horrible? Like, wait till you get into the real world where nobody cares what anyone
Yeah.
thinks.
Yeah.
And yes, he can talk and he can do whatever he wants. And if you tell him to stop talking, try to give a yellow dot, he's not going to care. Like, it's just
Right.
that's a condition that makes you feel like you need to be put in a box. And I don't like that he was in it. So I just kind of turned it around. I said, yeah, talk all you want. I said, whatever yellow dots we get, we'll talk about it. But as far as I'm concerned, you're fine. And dad matters. Don't worry about that. I'll have all the questions that you ever need. So
Right.
that's kind of how we left it at that. And then he never did get another yellow dot again after I was pressing, which I also found interesting. Or like, was the teacher just like not wanting to deal with the relentless dad, asking her a million questions about a very simple thing? Maybe that was it, where I just kind of got a little nuts at parent-teacher conferences, really keying in on that. She did the whole, give him 10 positives and then hit us with the negative at the end. But I've really focused on that negative, and she was trying to bring it back positive. I'm like, so if he's doing 10 things good and this one bad, I go, does he really need a yellow dot? Or what are we doing to his, what are we doing here? Like,
Yeah. His self impression. Yeah.
Yeah, is there any credibility to this study? Where'd you learn this? The same college I went to. Like, where does this benefit my kid, where he now needs to feel like he can't talk? Where do we win here? Where do we win here? That's what I was getting at, and so it never happened again. And they were very brief with us at parent-teacher conferences, and didn't actually I sent Zayra in more because I just noticed that I wasn't getting the smiles and the highs I was getting after I kind of not lost my temper, but like just asked
Challenged. Spoke up. Yeah.
Challenged their thought process, and I wasn't in the box any longer, and they kind of like, oh no, and they probably deal with dads like me all over the place. So that's a good, I thought it was good, but yeah, I wasn't having it. I guess we'll put it on that.
Right.
So I hear other things where like my nephew has to go to the front of the room and he's got a clothespin, and if he doesn't behave, he has to put himself down one notch. And I'm like, pull him out of that school. I'm like, pull him out, write a letter, let them know. You're demoralizing these kids. And then they get into the real world, and then someone's going to tell them, oh, I'm your boss. You do what other bad behaviors are going to affect you terribly. And then pretty soon you're just going to be like, oh, well, I need to knock myself down one peg. Come on, people.
Yeah.
You got to rise up a little bit, build yourself.
And I think that mindset, that willingness to let others give you your definition of your value or your success or your worth or your abilities, if anybody wants to see how powerful that becomes, look at the confidence that a toddler, a preschooler has, and like their willingness to kind of, and even if they're an introverted kid, like just at that age, so many kids are willing to try stuff, do stuff, interact with things. Like even the way that they hold themselves, their posture is amazing. Like so much about them exudes that confidence. And then you look at a high school quad and a sea of kids who've been through that system, And you really very rarely see people make it through that with the same, not impossible, but so many of them it's like almost like someone turns those lights out. And I will speak, I'll be the first one. I worked for the system for a decade. Like I'm part of it. I have the credential. I was there. I'm not saying it's every teacher, I'm not saying it's every system, but there are trends. And we can't just keep denying that there are trends because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings who is a really good quality teacher. Same way, like I always say this with cops, like I'm going to call out a bad cop, and no, that doesn't mean that all cops are bad. It's not like that's a false dichotomy. It's not, we never admit that there are those who are making mistakes, or else we condemn everybody if anyone makes a mistake. Like both of those are crap logic. It's holding people to account of what they're claiming to do. And in a classroom, what my understanding is we're claiming to foster human beings. Like we're educating, but we're trying to raise them up to become quality human beings. And I bought into so much of that stuff when I first started teaching. Like in my first year teaching, I had that stupid clothespin thing because all the other teachers on the team had that. And it wasn't until a couple of years of like having those moments where I'm like, what am I doing to these kids? Like, this is humiliating, this is demoralizing, that I realize, like, this is all garbage. Like, it's much more effective to simply have a conversation with that kid. If they're doing something that's not working, you talk to them and say, like, hey, here's what's going on, here's what we're trying to do, can you help it work? And even at 5 years old, kids get that. Like, they can be reasoned with. But all too often, they call it classroom management. That's the term in the industry of education. Classroom management, classroom management. There's entire books that they'll make you read on classroom management. Teachers are evaluated by their administrators on classroom management. At the end of the day, most of classroom management is the result of the numbers. It's a result of, I guarantee, like, your son getting the yellow dot if for talking wouldn't have been an issue if he was one of a handful of kids. It was because there were so many kids, and if all of them are allowed to talk anytime they want to talk, then that's too much. Blah, blah. It's a numbers game. And one of the things I love about homeschooling is even if you have a big family, I mean, I know plenty of families that are homeschooling with like a dozen kids, it's still half of what you'll find in most classroom settings. So a lot of these issues of management, of having these superficial expectations, of having kind of this like almost corporate approach to education automatically get wiped away just by being in a homeschool setting. And it frees up so much time. And that's the theme I keep, as you're talking, that's the theme I keep hearing in what you're describing, is being able to really utilize your time on what matters most, like really prioritize. And your kid's not forced to deal with all of this other kind of superfluous, time wasting, unnecessary stuff. I'm curious if there were any misconceptions that you had about homeschooling previously, like growing up or, before you decided to become a homeschool family. What were some of the misconceptions that you have had that have not been shattered?
Not to cut you off, I just didn't want my kids to be weird. Okay, like
Fair.
you think homeschool kid, and you think they can't communicate, they're wearing wrinkled clothes, like the whole like when we were growing up, the kids that were homeschooled were like farm kids, like right, like nothing. And now I'm friends with them, or I have buddies that went to school. They got
Sure.
reintroduced to school, but like I just remember how they were. They stood in the corner and they were, or they were getting in trouble more, or whatever. And it was just it's more how you do it. It's parenting. It's
Right.
it's not homeschool. It's how you're doing it. Like I always laugh about my son. I give him a hard time. You know what I mean? And I'll say, well, he doesn't have anybody around to bully him, so someone's got to be a bully, right? Like that's a joke. But then you turn on the TV, people are like, oh my god, my kid was bullied. I remember when I was in school. I mean, you got thrown in the shower. It was kind of like they just wanted to be your friend at a point. So now,
Yeah.
but now the lines are blurred where it's like everything is bad, nothing is good. I mean, I remember Mike Wojciechowski he played for Minnesota. He was a cornerback, special teams. He owns a gym in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Talked to him once in a while. Just a shredded guy. He threw me in the shower. We were on the same team. He was just like trying to be my friend, right?
Right.
Or I was in wrestling, and some guys came over and put icy hot on me, like playing around and and then just like that type of stuff. But now if you did that, my God, you'd get probably suspended, maybe even thrown out of school. But that was just
Right.
normal back then. So I always joke around with my son, he'll walk past me and I'll hit him, not or
Yeah.
I'm like knock a book out of his hand, and I'm like, that's just bullying, Aiden. You know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
joke around about it and stuff like that. You got to make it. you got to make it fun, but you got to make them so that they're consistently socializing. I feel like that's so important. And I'm not going to say like there's times when I'm not like, ooh, like this needs to be worked on. But how many parents don't consciously go, this needs to be worked on? Like, hey, send them to school at 7 in the morning. They'll fix it. They'll
Yeah.
fix her.
Yeah.
At school. Whereas I'm like, okay, that was, I didn't like the fact that he didn't make eye contact, or that guy wanted to shake his hand and he was a little bit timid. Even though it's like stranger danger is what we've been teaching him, but that's, his uncle, he can shake hands, that's what he's trying to do. So like,
Right.
keying in on things that we get to teach him that kind of stuff and go, okay, I saw that. I understand like eye contact's big. Like, Aiden wouldn't make eye contact. I noticed after he started school. I don't know what it was, but he just, I'm like, Aiden, look at me in the eyes. Come on. So now he does. Now he doesn't have a problem. Karate helped him with that. I highly recommend karate or martial art. Like I'm not talking like sign your kid up for UFC and let him get punched, right? Like it's the discipline, and they are a little bit hard on your kids. You want somebody to be in a controlled environment, a little bit hard on your kids, and he's, it's toughened him up. He used to like stub his toe and he'd be laying on the ground crying. We've all seen that kid. We've all been embarrassed by our kid because they got like a fly landed on him and they're calling it a bee and it's scared. And it's like, now my son, honestly, I mean, like he's like, Dad, I got punched today a couple times. It hurt, but I got him back. I'm gonna be honest, Dad. Like when we got to spar, I got him back. Like I hit him a couple times more, or his hands are like got, knuckles. He's like, I really don't like punching the bag. I like punching the billy, which is like the fake looking person because it's softer. So like karate, that type of stuff. I dislike T-ball. I was a baseball player, played T-ball. I don't know why parents think it's cute to have their kid running the wrong way, not knowing what the hell's going on, or like swings the bat and it doesn't do right, and then the kid runs the wrong way, and they're like,
this
my
is
kid.
So great. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, your kid, like, please help your child so that the confidence goes up when they're doing and they're excelling. And that's what I like about karate. I talk to his senseis. I talk to, like, what do we got to do here? He's in the advanced portion of it. He's excelling as much as he tells me he's tired and he dislikes it. We he gets a new belt. We're like, oh my goodness, where we want to go to dinner. We're picking dinner. He's, the other day he wanted a steak when he got his red belts. We're at the Texas Roadhouse. He's eating his steak. He's proud. We're building him up. And he's got confidence. He goes in there and he's like, Fridays isn't so hard anymore, Dad. I'm like, okay, cool. You're about to be a black belt, and then you can go do whatever else you want. I want to stick with karate. My dad's like, oh, why doesn't he play T-ball? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And I'm like, Dad, you have people in karate that are black belts, senseis, teaching your kid how to be a black belt. In T-ball, you have a volunteer that's a minimum wage person. Nothing against minimum wage. That's not where I'm going with this. You have a person that probably never played sports, or they played sports maybe at a high level, maybe at a mediocre, and your kid's running the wrong way. And you don't question what they're teaching your kid to build their confidence. It's kind of like, oh, Billy ran the wrong way, and it's so cute. And I'm like, man, this
and
is
they got
not...
a great video of it for TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And they're like, oh, look how funny it is. My kid's so funny, and they laugh, and the kid's sitting there and they're laughing. Well, one day the kid's going to realize he was running the wrong way, and the family's laughing at him. So then he's going to be like, why was that so funny? That was me.
Yeah.
That was me. I will never forget we got put out of a tournament, and my dad told me it's okay to lose. To this day, I remember how sick I was when my dad told me that, and I started to question my dad. And I was like, probably 8, 9 years old. Like, what do you mean it's okay to lose? I can't play baseball tomorrow because that other team beat me, and you're telling me this is okay, Dad? Yeah. And I was like hurt, like disgusted inside by it. So that's what developed me more. And then had the ability to identify traits in people that I like and traits in people that I didn't like, and how I wanted to be. Right. That's what I want for karate with my son. He's developing traits from karate where it isn't like fall on the ground and cry. Like, the other day there's a bee outside. He's like, there's neighbor kids or whatever. They're like, oh God, a bee. My son's playing, there are bees buzzing around him. He's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a bee. Yeah. Right. Like, where a group of others may freak out, and then your kids are afraid of bees, and then stuff like that. I mean, it's just, I always give my, I think last year was the 17th time I've been stung by a bee. So I put on Facebook, like, I'm a 17-time bee sting survivor, like, as a joke. Yeah. Me and my brother used to like blow them up and stuff when we were kids. Like, that's what whatever, get a couple cans of rain. Dad said there's a beehive under the deck. Let's go get it. Like, being kids. But nowadays, hey, here's a can of Raid and go kill some bees. You might get thrown in jail as a parent.
Right.
you're first off, you're damaging nature, and then the second of all, oh my God, you just gave your kid a can of poison.
And
Like,
don't get me started about those chemicals.
yeah, right. I mean, everybody's over 90% Roundup now, and that's what's killing everybody. Like all the crazy stuff that's out there, and we're just kind of letting it fly. Whereas when we were growing up and stuff like that, it was life. It's how life is. It's just how life was, and now everybody's got their opinion that they try to influence everybody, and nobody has a spine to say that's wrong because
Yeah.
you don't want anybody's feelings. But then there's people like myself that are unapologetic. I'm not apologizing. I am unapologetic. My kids are my kids, and we had a situation where we're up north, and my nephew's yelling at my son, like screaming, like in his face. My son's like completely calm, and he said, "Dad, you know what I thought?" I go, "What do you think?" He's like, "I could have wrench handed at that moment and ended that whole." And I'm like, "Good, you didn't, but at least you know, and you have the posture that you could have ended that if it got ugly." He goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I was fine." That's what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want to feel, "Oh, I'm getting yelled at. I better go hide."
Yeah.
Or an adult yelled at me. You don't know who's yelling. You don't know what the problems they have. So you don't want your kid to be influenced by a lot of these people. And
Yeah.
that's what I like most about homeschool is you get to teach them. And there's always consistent learning opportunities from daily things that are going on. And stuff, daily things that are going on that you see where, like, I'm like, hey, go cut the grass. He's out there at 7 years old, we're weed whacking, we're blowing the yard out. Try to
Yep.
ask another kid, hey, let's go cut the grass. Oh my God, I'm on my
It's loud.
iPad.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, like, oh God, I don't know how to turn it. I can't plug in an outlet. You want them doing things like that. And that's what I really like the most about it is the real life things that we get to teach them. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the curriculums that we have, Zayra does all that. Zayra is the teacher. I stay. She's like 100% devoted to it at such a high level that I'm impressed. I don't say anything. Hey, what do you think of this? It's like, what do you think of it? Well, I really like good, get it. Like I don't question it.
Yeah.
And I just know that I like what I'm seeing in my kids based on what she is accomplishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to tweak the things that I'm kind of noticing that is going to help them out, down the road, and what I know in life. She was a great student. I was not. So she's teaching them stuff. And then I see her getting more, like memorizing, and we need to do, flashcard. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We need to apply it
Right.
to things so that the application is there, not just the memorizing and regurgitating.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see. That's where it's going with everything, and just as a whole. I know I'm kind of going in circles a little bit here, but there's a lot going on that I've never been really asked. That's the cool part. Like this is,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Are you sure you want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." I've just never been asked my
Right.
opinion on it because everybody's been telling me what I need to do.
Yeah.
Parents,
Yeah.
family, oh, you should put your kids in school. Oh, why? Give me a reason. And they don't want to talk to me much because I'm like, yeah, give me good we were at the fire up north, and it was I forgot what it was. It was like, Ellery, what's 2 + 2 or something like that. And Aiden goes 4, walks away, homeschool. Ellery was like kind of like sitting there, and I looked at my mom. My mom looks down, and I'm like, Mom, look at me. What just happened here? Like kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just not, it's not one was better than the other, but Aiden just was on it, and it was spelling too. They were having some spelling stuff, and my son was able to spell it, and they were kind of struggling. And kids struggle; it's part of it. But my kids were on it, but they're criticizing us for homeschooling.
Right.
But then my kids were being able to spell, and they're regurgitating the information. And then the kids in school are kind of like not doing it. And then what gets me, and this is probably going to sound a little bit, no, it's not going to sound terrible, but you see kids start to act like other kids at school, and
Yeah.
you see kids start to make weird noises because someone else is making a weird noise at school. So then they come home and they start doing that kind of stuff. That stuff drives me wild. Like, I know it's kids being kids, but when my kids lay on the floor making some stupid noise, and I'm like, what is that? And it's like, they look at you like, and I'm like, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
I started to see that when my son was in school, and now, like, he walks around and he says, bruh, because his friends at school say, bruh. So I'm like, hey, where do you pick this up?
Yeah.
So then, the other day we were wrestling around, and I had him pinned down, and I'm like, say bruh, keep saying bruh, say bruh again, like
Yeah.
just give him those little hits so it's like, dad doesn't really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You sound kind of dumb when you say it, but like,
Yeah.
we're gonna have some fun with it, and I'll beat you up a little bit over it, tickling them and having fun, and if you get to see that as a homeschool dad versus, I feel like I get thrown less curveballs. Now he's saying bruh because of karate. But God only knows what he's going to hear at school when they have him 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, a day.
Right.
And what else are they going to hear? What else are they going to say? What else are they going to pick up on? Because I tell you what, I picked up on some crazy stuff when I was a kid.
Oh,
We
sure.
didn't have the internet. You didn't have the
Yeah.
internet. Now these kids are on the internet or talking on Minecraft and stuff like that. So you don't know what they're going to pick up. And that's what I don't like. I don't like those curveballs. And I noticed that in the kids that are around us, they're making noises or being silly or being goofy. And it's kind of like borderline inappropriate or just borderline where your kid just doesn't look normal. Like they're not acting appropriate and you got to correct it. And my sister kind of sometimes has issues where she's frustrated with that, but she's working full time and so is her husband. So they can't address it 100% like she would like to.
Right.
And then it's just kind of things that I get to. Another positive is I get to avoid a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stuff that's put into their heads that I don't like to hear. Not that I'm right all the time, whatever. We're all human beings, but like there's just certain behaviors that I just don't like seeing. And especially with I can take my son to a business meeting. He sits there, he eats, they give him a little
Right.
trouble. The other day we were out with a lender, we're fishing. He wasn't inappropriate. He all he wanted. He said, "Dad, I'll behave myself if you get me a Dr. Pepper." Like it's a funny joke coming from a 7-year-old.
Yeah,
to get him a Dr. Pepper. By the time we left the boat launch, he was already had drank it. We're laughing about it, and then he was fishing the whole time, throwing a hook, and I didn't have to worry about him hooking the lender and costing me like a business relationship in the boat.
Right.
And he's like a little adult in a way, and then he gets a little crazy where he almost fell in the water because he spun the seat, and I'm like, hey, can you? He goes, I know, I'm sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. We don't need to be apologetic here. But he's like, I know, Dad, I almost fell in. That would have been crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He learns. He's conscious of his own thoughts at this point, which is all. I think that's pretty cool.
That is so great. I think anybody listening would. I mean, like I think back to my childhood. I'm envious of your son. Like I love the experiences that you're giving him, and so when you see that world that opens up and the way that you're utilizing it, that's such an underappreciated and not enough people are talking about that aspect of homeschooling. Like there's so many homeschool moms who talk about their experience and how it's fulfilling for them, and they don't want to say goodbye to their kids and send them off, and so it's really nice to have them maybe teaching them. But that peripheral stuff, like that stuff that you're able to do as a dad, I could swap stories about so many similar things of like letting them do those hard things, letting them mow the lawn, and it sucks, and they're even just trying to start the mower, and it takes a ton of tries, but you let them keep going, and then the satisfaction that they feel when they push through and they accomplish those things. And at school, like I couldn't push my students in the classroom in those same ways because I would I would have gotten in trouble. Like if I had said, try to do this hard thing and keep trying, and when you fail, I'm not going to swoop in and mother hen you. I'm going to make you keep trying and trying and trying and trying. I don't know how many people would have come down on me and been like, how dare you? This kid cried when you didn't help them or when you didn't do it for them or whatever. I wonder, and I get this question a lot, and I know that some of the moms, Zayra put out and was asking, you've covered a lot of the questions actually that the moms had asked about, so this is great. But one of the big questions that comes up is how, my husband, homeschool moms say, my husband isn't that interested in homeschooling or doesn't approve of homeschooling or doesn't think it's a great thing. How do I convince my husband that it's the right thing? Or how do I get him more involved? And I struggle with that question because for me, I think a lot of it does come from your own goals, your own values. Like clearly for you as a driven man, this is what you value. And so this is why you value these things in homeschool. Like it allows you to prioritize what's important to you. But I also think that there are things that are underutilized or that dads aren't even aware of, like isn't on their radar, and you've highlighted a ton of them. But with that question, what would you say, like either to that mom who wants to invite her husband in, or even to the dad who has an open mind, like he's willing to let the homeschool happen, but for him it's like, that's my wife's thing, my wife does it, I go to work, I pay the bills, it's two separate worlds. What advice do you have to like bridge that gap or to start trying some of these things and fold that in?
Yeah, so what I did at the beginning, it's funny you asked that because right when she brought it up, I went, oh wow, that's different. And different scares you, right? Like, I mean, that's just
Sure.
the world that we were brought up. Like, oh my God, you're different. Everybody's different now. Everybody's labeled now. Everybody's a thing now. So different is not good, right? In the eyes of many out there. So it took me a while, and she's like, well, I'm gonna homeschool, and I'm going, all right, well, COVID's here. They have no plan. We'll hold them out for a year. What does it mean? You know what I mean? In my head, I said the public school system is going to freak out, which they did. They didn't have teachers there, which was teachers weren't going. And then they were going to say, oh, your kid's behind. I already knew
Right.
this was going to happen. Oh,
Oh
your
yeah.
kid's not doing so hot because
Spot
we
on.
were, yes. So I already knew that was going to happen. I said, what the hell's 1 year? Right? Like,
Yeah.
what are they going to tell my kindergartner? He's behind. Okay, cool. Yeah, he colored outside the lines. Big deal. Right? That's kind of what I thought. I was at a good age with my son. So I said, we'll do it for 1 year. But then as I saw her take it and take initiative. So like when you're a mom, you love your kids unconditionally, and it is like the most powerful thing that you ever seen. Zayra is an amazing mother. So I don't want to take her and take away what she's doing with her kids. Because I've seen her rise to a sense of purpose I've never seen her have before. I mean,
Yeah.
she was a real estate agent, and she helps me with stuff and whatnot. But I mean, the other day we were listening to a podcast. The first podcast I ever listened to of homeschooling was like 2 days ago, to be honest. I let her run the whole thing. I am like I want to teach my kids, I want to teach my kids what I know.
Yeah.
But they need to know the things that she's teaching. They need to know
Sure.
those cool things. So, as a dad, what are your interests? And I'm not telling, you know what I mean? If you're, and you may have to change yourself. Like, I don't, I'm not going to say drinking's bad or anything. I don't drink any longer because I felt like my kids were watching me. And then you see your beer drinking buddies standing there with their little, their belly, and they're not in shape. I work out every day, and their kids are following in that path. So you're in control of what your kid wants to see,
Yeah.
and how your kid wants to be, because they look up to you as a father. So don't be negative about homeschooling, because your kids will be negative about homeschooling and negative about school in general. So be positive about it, educate yourself on it. I was reading about it. I was reading positives versus negatives. I was writing down my own positives versus negatives. And then I
Sure.
wanted to become a role model for my children, because I see so many people that let themselves go, that they're not being good for their kids. So you have to become that person also, that you want your kids to be down the road. Whether, not that, like I said, I don't want my kids to come into real estate unless they want to. They're not going to take over my companies, unless they really want to. They take a huge, look at it. I would love to see it go on generational. Of course, that's like, that's my dream, is to have generational, my business to go on forever. But if it doesn't happen, that's not the end of the world. But getting back to that, dads, you got to take a look at it, because your kids are getting taught things that you don't like. And unless you stand up for it, they're going to keep doing it. And then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
watch your kid, and the last thing I don't want, my kids can let me down, and then we can adapt to it. But I never want to make it seem like I let my kids down to the point where it was something that I could have controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're in their situation. And that scares me. That keeps me up. The fact that I'm homeschooling my kids does not keep me up. The fact that if I do something that affects my children negatively, that is what keeps me up. So dads, get immersed with it, learn it, because it's a huge tool, and it's very powerful for what you need to do to accomplish what you want your kids to be. And people you don't want your kids to be like, get them out of your life. Anybody that's criticizing you or making decisions, they get them. You don't. They're not raising your children. You're raising your children. So dads, take
Yeah.
accountability for that and your actions. If you're having an issue with your husband over homeschooling, homeschool your kids. Do what you want to do, and see where it goes. Like, they have to understand that you're looking out for the best interests of your children, and sending them to school. Those people don't have this. They get a paycheck every Friday. How many of you guys take your job seriously? Would you, if you were doing your job at your level, would you want your level teaching your kids? That's that's a question that I would ask. So when you have your wife or your girlfriend or whomever is helping raise your children, they love those kids more than anybody ever is going to love those children. So they're going to
Yeah.
teach them, and they're going to be freaking out. Zayra's working. I mean, there's times like she's recording content and stuff like that. I mean, she gets up at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I get up, and she's standing there, and she's out on the kitchen table like, oh, I'm putting stuff out, and they're having like a party that day. And I'm going, there's no teacher up at 4 in the morning right now giving a shit about my kid.
Yeah.
And she is. And that's what you have to see in your partner and understand it. If it's a passion of theirs, let them run with it. You don't have to share their passion as much because you're out there working. I mean, Zayra does some side stuff. She helps me out. But that's it. I am the financial person in this relationship. And I do my job and my accountability. So my son sees me doing that. My daughters see me doing that. And that's what a guy's supposed to do. We're supposed to be out conquering. We're not supposed to be sitting around a house, or getting all messed up, or work out, get in shape, and be that person that your kids look up to. Like I want my kids one day to say, "Remember, Dad? The guy was constantly working." And I remember he had realtors coming in and out of the house, and he was out there conquering, and he was flying out to this Tahoe. Remember these stories of Dad? What the hell? What the hell was he doing? Like I'm a legend, and you can do that as a dad and teach your kids so that they follow in those steps, so that they have a better open-minded life. A lot of this has opened up a lot of opportunity for myself too, because I can travel, I can take the kids. We're going. My Aiden wants to go to Florida because he saw this YouTube video with Raw Fam. It's actually kind of funny. It's this kid that just catches a bunch of fish, right? And he wants to go to Florida. So we're going to Florida. We're going to go fishing on the ocean a little bit. Take my daughters and Zayra. We're going to go fishing on the ocean. You got to take your kids out. You got to ask another adult permission to live your life.
Right.
And this stuff I'm just not interested in doing any longer. I'm not interested in the program. So I mean, dads, get uninterested with the current program. Ladies, if you're having issues with the guys that are interested in the current program, wake them up a little bit too. So I guess that's my whole side of it. Is just I could go on. I mean, that stuff like having to ask adults permission to do stuff. I sign my own checks. One time a person said that I worked for them. I was 16. I quit that job. Like, yeah, I wake up every single day to come here and make sure you're okay. I could not take it. So maybe that's just a personality flaw that I have. Maybe I'm a little wired differently. But like that's the way that I see things. Like I refuse to have my kids have the same ideas about asking people for permission. You should not have to do that. Respect your parents, respect the ideas of other people, but make sure you're getting them in a direction where they're standing on their own and they're ready to take on the world by themselves, because it's a wild place out there. And unless they have background in a spine and fortitude, it's going to be a tough life. And we see those people that are our friends right now, they're having a tough life.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you avoid that, but get on the same page with your significant, whether it's if a dad wants to homeschool and the girl, the wife isn't, into it, you guys need to have a meeting and really sit down, positives and negatives, tune in. Zayra watches stuff constantly. I mean, I almost feel bad for her at times because her Instagram is so flooded with questions.
Yeah.
I mean, constantly she's on her phone, and I'm like, hey, we got to tune it down. Like maybe an hour a day you can answer questions. I mean, it's to that point.
Yeah.
But it's people seeking confidence in others. And that's alarming to me. Like I didn't go on Instagram and ask anybody if I was going to homeschool my kids. I said, okay, yeah, positives, negatives, good. I like the positives, the negatives, great. Here we go. I didn't ask anybody. My parents are like, my parents are not that. They make their little comments, but they don't make their comments so much anymore. They don't make their comments a lot because I've already said, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. So get on the same page, you guys. Just be on the same page and understand. There's way more positives, and you may have to make some lifestyle changes. But again, that's self accountability. What do you want your kid to be? They look up to you like nobody. They look up to you like you are the only person. Because remember how you did it with your parents.
Right.
Is that guy who you want to be? That is that person? And for me, I'm total black sheep of the family. I'm the only one that owns a business. Everybody else has jobs. I was kind of, I'm way different. Thought process is different. Everything is different, and you got to stand alone, or else you're going to be like everybody else, which is not necessarily a good thing these days.
Yeah. Amen to
Did that
that.
answer the question? Did
You
that answer
did.
the question?
You answered it.
I'm trying to keep it PC too, because there's times I want to like, like why do you want to send your kid to a school where they're talking about chemical enhancement? Like seriously, you're a parent.
Yeah.
Like, you're a parent. They're gonna teach your kid that in what, kindergarten now, and you're gonna sit there and you're gonna let that happen to your kids. Like
Yeah.
I'd be dead before that ever happened. I would lose my mind. I could not take it.
Yeah.
There would
It was
be,
it was the same it was the same thought process for me, not just as a parent, but as an educator. And I can't be a part of that system. That's why I resigned and walked away from it. It's serious stuff that's getting infused. And um, I think to springboard off of some of what you were highlighting, I think the default for a lot of parents is, well, school is the place where they're going to learn to function in the real world, quote unquote. And I challenge anybody to listen to this interview and to listen to all of the things that you're talking about instilling in your children, and explain how the real world, how having those skills would then not prepare you for the real world, or how the real world would be challenging to someone who had that accountability, that confidence, that drive, that ability to speak to others respectfully, but know that your opinion and what you're doing matters, and you don't have to just go along with them. The unwillingness to say, "Oh, I'm just going to ask everyone else for permission and not make my own decisions." Those are what prepare us for the real world, and what school prepares you for, in many instances, is to be a cog in a machine. And the machine needs cogs. The machine very desperately needs cogs. There's cubicles that have to be filled, and there's positions that have to be hired for, with people who are willing to do those repetitive things or do those. And again, no disrespect to people who choose to do that, but I fear that too often it's not a choice. It's this kind of track that kids get on, and then, oh, you get this degree, you'll be able to get this job, and you get this job, and you get hired here. And it all just becomes automatic. And in so much of what you're saying, what I hear is homeschooling gives you freedom, homeschooling gives you sovereignty, homeschooling gives you autonomy, homeschooling gives you the ability to pass on what you value, your family's values, to your child. And you can't find another way to do that. That is the most efficient way to do that. And for me, that's the drive for us. Like, my wife and I are also very different from many of the other members of our family. We are very different from a lot of our same age peers, and value things that they don't value, and don't waste our time with a lot of the things that they waste their time with, a lot of the consumption entertainment and things where it's like, I just love being distracted for 8 hours a day or whatever it is that they're doing with their time. And we don't want our kids to think that that's what you should do either. And so being able to pass that on, it's just like you said something earlier, like, school didn't work for me, and my kids are my kids, so why am I going to assume that it's going to work for them because they're going to be like me? Same thing. Like, you have to recognize that if you have problems with public education or with private schools or charter schools, the traditional school setting, if you have problems with it, then why you just assume it's all going to work out for your kid? And the system now is very different than what any of us saw when we were kids.
Yes.
We've been talking about so much. I want to give you a chance to share any other last things before we, end out here. But thank you so much. You've already shared so many awesome.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm talking and you're excited, and some of those big words that you said, I don't even know what they meant. But like, that's the beauty of them. That's it. Like, you could sell it. Like, he knows some big words. I don't, but I know how to do other things. That's the beauty. Like, not everybody's going to get to levels in certain things, and that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Nor do they have to. And let your kids develop and develop your children. They have interests. Develop those interests, but also open up their eyes. This is a crazy story, and I may lose some people, but one of my daughters who keeps bringing it up. We went for a walk in the woods, and we were going to go squirrel hunting. I hunt a lot, so like squirrels are easy to obtain.
Sure.
So we're going through the woods, and she's like, "Well, are we going to get one, Dad?" And she's 4; she don't know what the heck she's doing. So like, I go, "Yeah, we'll go over here, we'll get a couple." So then like they're jumping through, so I start shooting, and I said, "Cover your ears, blah blah blah." So I start shooting. We get some, and I let them carry them. 2 of them. Each kid's carrying. I got a picture of it, right? She brings it up to this day. This happened about a year ago. Well, a year ago, hunting season, so like October. She brought it up the other day. Hey, Dad, when are we going to go squirrel hunting? It's my 4-year-old daughter. When are we going again, Dad? That was so much fun. It's just the idea, and their brains are working. I would rather have my kids worried about hunting squirrels or chasing down fish or their wild ideas about. My son wants to go to Florida because there's different fishing rules that he found on YouTube that he wants to do. He wants to use a throw net. You can't use it in Wisconsin; it's illegal. Well, we got to go to Florida, Dad. That's where it's at. Versus what some kids are thinking about or what some
Right.
parents think are important out there. And that's what I would rather have. Like I go duck hunting, they're like, "Oh, Dad, you get anything cool? Can we see it?" Like they're holding the ducks. Now my son's coming hunting with us. The other we're out in we're going down a river. I turn the motor off and there's like a pack of coyotes howling, and he's like, "Dad, we got to get the heck out of here." But he brings up the coyotes howling, and like, "Oh, I wasn't scared. I just said we had to go because like we didn't want, they were probably going to get hungry, and I wasn't scared of those." Like his brain's going in different directions outside of a normal kid. Can I go to the gas station and get some chips? Or what I see in other kids, their thought process about they got to get back to their Minecraft, they got to get back to their Fortnite, their video games. My kids are like, "Hey, Dad, can we go fishing?" Like, "Hey, Dad, can we cut the grass?" "Hey, Dad, can we?" They're doing things that they don't know is like constructive and kind of a pain in the ass when you're an adult, but they're having fun doing it, so it makes it fun as a parent. But
Right.
too that's probably going to carry on generationally. So
Yeah.
I had a weird upbringing where my grandparents lived like 2 houses away. They went through the Great Depression, so they had a garden all the time. So I remember eating Depression food and stuff like that because my grandparents would cook it because that's just like their diet was. And I remember that. So we have a garden, so we're out gardening, we're out having fun, even though we live in a city. We live in Kenosha, where the riots were.
Sure.
You guys probably saw it on the news. So we have a garden, we have that kind of stuff, so we can stuff, and we do that all with the kids. At the time, they hate it. "Dad, I really can't eat food. I want to play on my iPad." But all of a sudden, it'll be like 3 months later, 4 months later. "Hey, Dad, when do we get to do this again?" And that's when like their ideas are
Yeah.
changing. They're they're implementing them. They're thinking about that kind of stuff. Like, and make it a big deal. My kid catches a freaking 2-inch fish. "Oh my God, let's take a picture." And she thinks she's on top of the world, and she's
Right.
smiling, and her confidence is through the roof. And the other day, I had to buy a purple fishing pole for her because she's a girl. Like, "I need a purple one, Dad." We got a purple fishing pole. Got it for her. She's all, "Dad, it looks like a strong one, but to be able to catch all the big fish." That's how my kids are thinking.
Yeah.
That's how my kids are thinking. That's what they're doing. Hold on one second, I'm getting blown up here.
Yeah. No problem.
That's what my kids are thinking. Um, that's how my kids are thinking. They're not thinking about whatever. I mean, I don't know I don't even know what kids think of anymore because we've been homeschooling so much. But
Right.
like, my kids wants to be fast. He wants to. I was telling everybody, this is my son Aiden. One day he wants to be as fast as I am. "Dad, don't talk like that to me." You know what I mean? Like, so he's like defending himself, but I'm like, "I'm faster. Let's race. Let's throw
Yeah.
down."
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you create that, and so you just have fun with your kids and enjoy the time you have with them because they grow so fast. I mean, my son's already 7 years old. You know what I mean? It goes so fast, and you only have limited amounts of time with them to have that impression and how they're going to act. Like, I mean, I could go on and on. Like, kids around are afraid to climb trees. I mean, my kids are up in the trees dangling around, and you know what I mean? Because they've been taught that it's okay. Where other people are like, "Oh, put a helmet on. Make sure your kid," you know what I mean? We
Right.
used to ride we used to ride bikes, go flying down hills on skateboards with no helmets, skin our arms off and our knees off, and our dad be like, "Okay, cool, put a Band-Aid on it or whatever, and go back out." Like,
Yeah.
now it's just too messed up, and people are soft, and that's what I
Right.
notice, and they value that softness, and people that even people like me, unapologetically a successful guy. Like, trust me, I have run people over to get where I'm at in business. Maybe you consider me a bad guy, so probably somebody would. If you talk to the right person, I'm a scumbag.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm doing it for my kids, so please get out of my way. And
Right.
I don't, and that's just the way that it is, and that's business, and that's life, and there's nothing wrong with bettering yourself, and there's nothing wrong with making your life better for your kids, leaving your kids something, and not only money, not only whatever you can leave your kids, but definitely leaving your kids an impression where they're not going to have a hard life or lead to a substance abuse problem, or they're walking around saying they're depressed, they don't even know what it means. Or we were going on the slides one time at the Kalahari up in the Dells, and a girl's like probably 9 years old saying she has anxiety problems, and she's going down a water slide. I'm like, oh my God, like, where's your mom? I want to talk to her. You're her daughter. Like, but you probably meet the mom, you probably don't want to talk to her. And that's just the way that the world is right now, and that's how people are, and that's how I don't want to choose to raise my children. So I'm going to make that choice, because we still are in a free country, and we get to do what we want to do. And that's the best part about everything, is nobody gets to tell us what to do here, and we get to raise our kids how we want to raise them, and that's how I'm going to do it.
Amen to that, brother. Well, this has been such a pleasure. You've reminded me of so many of the benefits of homeschooling, so many things that I get fired up about as well. And hearing you talk about it, it energizes me, because a lot of them are things that, like we've talked about, so many don't want to talk about, or, don't even see. And so it's kind of like they're so preoccupied with the worries, like, well, what if my kid wants to get into college? Can they take the SAT? Or, well, what if my kid, needs more support than I have time to give them? It's like these fears. And what I love is our whole conversation, for however long it's been we've been talking, you've been highlighting the benefits, like all that homeschool has to offer, all of the value in homeschooling. It's not, well, here are all these worries and let's dive into these, or even, we've mentioned some of the negatives of public school, but it's not a running from anything. It's running to homeschooling and the world that opens up. So thank you for your time. Thank you for highlighting that. And thank you for being the kind of dad who takes advantage of those things, who doesn't just say, yeah, these are my kids and this is my wife and they do that homeschool thing while I go do what's important to me. You're an intentional father. You're an intentional homeschool father. And that's making a world of difference in the lives of your children, and now setting an example for countless others, so that those kids aren't just wondering, I don't know what my dad was doing all that time, but my mom was great. So thank you for that.
Right. Thank you. No, it's great to be, it's funny. You're not really like appreciated as a dad, or even men, as you get older, you're only appreciated for what you can produce. Right. So there's like that awkward time when you better make some money, or else you're never going to even talk to a girl or anything. And it's a very, very mental game that you have to play. And, it's great that you appreciate it. I appreciate doing it. I didn't really realize until you said that, how, I guess maybe it's rare that it's going on these days. I don't know, but, it's just great to hear. It's great to hear, and it's great to know that there's other dads out there. Dads, get involved. I mean, come on, it's your kids. I mean, who else is more important than your kids? I mean, I'll wait all day to come up with an answer. Let me know. There is nothing. There is nothing.
Amen to that. Well, thank you again, and it's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd.
That was Steve Robe, homeschool dad, real estate broker, avid outdoorsman, and unapologetically intentional father. If you like what you heard today, please take a moment to give our podcast a positive rating and review, and be sure to share it with the other parents and educators in your life. If you want to take the guesswork out of homeschooling while saving yourself time and money, head over to homesschooledvantage.com and check out our free resources, and consider becoming a member to unlock your access to the most comprehensive training available for homeschool parents. Their education begins with you. You can join the conversation by connecting with me on Twitter and Instagram at Todd K. Michael, Facebook and YouTube, Homeschool Edvantage, and at homesschooledvantage.com. That's homesschooledvantage with an E.com. Links to all in the show notes. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.